What's a tip that everyone should know which might one day save their life? One of the many things I watched on TV as a kid were Elvis Presley movies. In one of his movies, he has a date with a girl in her apartment. She cooks a roast in the oven for their dinner. Elvis arrives and the food is burning. Flames are shooting out of the oven. She makes a move to throw water on the fire, but Elvis stops her and grabs a container of salt and throws a handful of salt onto the fire, which promptly puts it out. One day, I'm sitting in the living room when I hear my mother yell from the kitchen. I race there and the flames are leaping out of the broiler. Huge grease fire, almost as high as the stove itself. Mother makes a move to throw water on it, but remembering how Elvis did it, I stopped her. Then I grab a container of salt and throw a handful of salt onto the fire, which immediately extinguishes the flames within seconds. Mother looks at me with a surprised expression on her face, and she asks me, "How did you know to do that?" Story 2. I'm an idiot and left my wallet on my car when pumping gas and drove off with it on there. It fell off on the side of the interstate and a couple saw it and pulled over to use my ID to find both me and my parents on Facebook to message us. They wanted to be sure that I wasn't kidnapped and threw it out as a clue. I had never thought of that before, but remember thinking, what a clever idea. Story 3. If you're lost in the woods, don't leave your location. People searching for you will start at your last known location, and you'll just make their job harder by expanding the search area. If you must leave, follow water. Early cities and towns were usually founded near a source of water. If you follow a stream, you're more likely to run into civilization, usually downstream, but really depends where you are. Edit. Geez, people, I'm not saying this is a magical spell that protects you from everything or a universal law that works 100% of the time. Apparently, I need to clarify not to follow the water off a cliff, into a cave, into a tiger pit, into a van marked free candy, or into a free Scientology audit. Man, that one was my favorite. Story 4. I have seen a lot of people who believe this is a myth and natural instinct says to pull out something that is puncturing you. But this is extremely important. Leave it in until a medical professional can remove it. If the object goes in the body smoothly, it will be more than likely to create a wound internally that is almost identical in size to the object. So it essentially acts as a plug. If it is pulled out, any blood vessels that are cut will no longer have the knife's edge pressing against them, and they will begin to bleed. If you pull it out and don't notice a lot of blood, the bleeding could be internal, so you wouldn't even realize that you are bleeding. You could also do some serious damage pulling out the object. My wife is a trauma surgeon and has had people cut organs pulling out knives or other sharp objects. When my son had a piece of fence go through his foot at a friend's house, he called me and I told him to stay still until the paramedics got to the scene. He knew not to pull it out. Once they got there, they were able to stabilize it until he got to the hospital so they could remove it. Even if the object is too big to be moved with you, the EMTs or whoever arrives on the scene can cut it down in a size so it can be moved. Never remove it. Story 5. Was in college and was separated from my friends one night that went out drinking. A car with 5 guys in it pulled me into the back seat across 3 of the guys' laps. Even drunk, I remembered my father telling me that vomiting could stop an SA. I looked around at the guys and asked, "Where in here can I throw up?" They made a screeching halt and threw me out of the car. May have saved my life. This happened in the late 80s, when gang essays happened on scary late-night movies and after-school specials. It, unfortunately, wasn't the traumatizing event that it should have been to me at the time. Or it may have scared me off of drinking, thus saving me from making more stupid drinking mistakes. I was a gullible, naive young girl that grew up hanging around with my brothers and their friends, and didn't feel an instant terror that a young girl would feel in this situation these days. I was very noticeably drunk, walking alone. When I was pulled in the back seat, even though I saw it was filled with boys, perhaps because of my level of drunkenness, it didn't seem that menacing. No one was grabbing me inappropriately, trying to hold me down. As far as I remember, the only one touching me was the guy holding me on his lap, with his hands around my waist. The guys were laughing like guys who were out drinking and having fun. They didn't say anything scary to me. In fact, the only thing I remember being said was that some guy in the back told the driver, "Hey, turn here." The driver turned hard, turning my stomach a little bit, and that's when I remembered my dad's advice. so I don't really deserve that much credit on remembering, and the only reason I used that advice is because I didn't quite know what was going on because none of the guys seemed angry or particularly menacing. So I was more confused than scared. I was in the car for less than a full minute before I was pushed out on a corner. Only when I woke up the next day and related what happened to my much smarter, worldly, and careful roommate did I realize how dangerous it could have been. My thinking up until then had been that a group of boys were out partying and saw a drunk girl and thought it'd be funny to grab her and take her with them to a party or something. God, was I stupid. I think young girls are much more informed these days. I was just lucky and very stupid. Thanks for the love anyway. Story 6. My brother went to New Orleans with his buddy and their girlfriends. While walking around, they get stopped by this huge black guy in a crisp white suit, and he says this: "I'm going to give y'all kids some rules to follow while you're here. 1. Never leave your drinks unattended. Everyone will try to put crap in there, even the bartenders. 2. You boys don't ever let your girls walk alone on these streets, even with a weapon. They might get taken. 3. If you're walking down a neighborhood and you don't see any children wandering around, leave immediately. If it's not safe enough for the kids, it ain't safe for you. 4. If you all want to buy some crack, I got some." Number 7. You can perform the Heimlich maneuver on yourself by making a fist and pushing upward quickly on the space between your rib cage and navel. You can lean on a piece of furniture and quickly thrust your abdomen against the edge. I've done it twice. Still alive. Edit. Wow, I wasn't expecting this kind of response. Hope it helps others. First of all, I'm glad that everyone who has included stories about themselves or others choking appear to be okay. Second, I'm aware that the esophagus and trachea are two separate things. The reason I said that I have an increased risk of choking was because I have a narrow esophagus. A doctor I saw told me that having a narrow esophagus, like mine, increases the risk of choking. And my experience was that I choked on vomit or food while still panicking after dislodging food from my esophagus. Third, I'd like to again state that I'm not a doctor. Story 8. If you feel an earthquake start and the shaking doesn't piddle out after 5 or 10 seconds, assume it will be big and take cover under something sturdy, or run outside where there is no power lines or bits of building above your head. Edit. Because people are getting mad about the run outside part, that's the safest option if you are right by the door and there is no adequate coverage inside and you have access to a clear space free of dangerous overhanging things. Whatever you do, don't stand in a doorway. That myth kills people. If duck and cover is the safer option, do that and go outside after the shaking stops. Don't try to walk in a strong earthquake if you have balance issues. It messes up your equilibrium. Sometimes, large earthquakes start out huge right away, and sometimes they wobble a bit before they hit, oh crap, strength. It depends on how far you are from the epicenter. If there was an earthquake at the beach you're on and you see the water receding away, run to higher ground immediately because a tsunami is coming. If you're in a town near water and see the water in ditches or rivers flowing the wrong way, seek higher ground because, again, a tsunami is coming. Story 9. If a nuclear bomb is dropped near you, seek shelter immediately. Close all windows and doors and turn off anything that circulates air, such as heating, AC, and fans. Take off your clothes, shower well, shampoo your hair, but do not use conditioner, which could trap contaminated particles in your hair. Stay inside for at least 24 hours, 72 if you can. Don't go outside for any reason, not even to look for family. If you do this, nuclear attacks are surprisingly survivable. So many people think you don't need to have an emergency plan because they think they'd automatically die in a nuclear attack. Don't be like those people. Edit. Some answers to comments below. What are you trying to avoid? Exposure to contaminated dust and particles. A nuclear detonation causes radioactive fallout. If you get radioactive dust on you, it will continue to expose you to radiation. Not good. So take off your dirty clothes and shower. What about the water you're showering with? The water you're using to shower right after the explosion is not likely to be contaminated. Why? Because it has been in your hot water heater and in pipes underground. Is my house enough to protect me? Better if you're in a basement, or at least an interior room, and better than nothing. Why isn't it safe to drive? Because there's much more airflow in the car, so you're bringing in more contaminated particles in the air. What happens after 72 hours? As time goes on, more and more fallout or contaminated particles settles, so there's less exposure. At some point, you're going to have to figure out your next move. Just do it after 72 hours. The electromagnetic pulse from the explosion will wipe out the power grid, cell towers, and other electromagnetic things, so you'll have to rely on non-electromagnetic forms of communication. Let's hope authorities have figured out some semblance of a plan. Obligatory. Man, but the government sucks. How can we trust them to keep us safe? Because you have been saved by far more things than you know of thanks to planning and emergency management. Is it perfect? No. But it's a heck of a lot better than it has been in the past, and than it is in many places. Story 10. If you find yourself close to an electrical hazard, like a downed power line, keep your feet together and carefully hop away from the danger. The electric differential between your legs can fry you if the charge is high enough. Ever wonder why sometimes there are whole herds of animals that die from a single lightning strike? This is why. Edit. There are some very good comments below. You should shuffle your feet slowly instead. You may need to jump in some cases. If so, it is crucial to start and end with both feet together when you break and resume contact with the ground. An example, a hop. Always shuffle or hop very carefully, as a fall could lead to death. If you are in a car that is safe, do not leave the car unless it is necessary to do so. Story 11. FAST, which is a way to identify if you or someone else is having a stroke. Facial drooping, a section of the face, usually only on one side, that is drooping and hard to move. This can be recognized by a crooked smile. Arm weakness, the inability to raise one's arm fully. Speech difficulties, an inability or difficulty to understand or produce speech. Time, if any of the symptoms above are showing, time is of the essence. Call the emergency services or go to the hospital. Story 12. If you are being questioned by the police and not arrested or detained, you are able to leave whenever you want. If you are arrested, shut the heck up. Just shut the heck up and ask for a lawyer. Note, in order to use what you say against you in court, they must Mirandize you. But being read your Miranda rights probably won't happen like it does on TV. While engaged in casual conversation about whatever, football, college, politics, etc., they drop something like, "You know you don't have to talk to us, right?" A little later, "Did you say you wanted a lawyer? 'Cause I can get one if you want." And finally, "You know, if any of this goes to court, we might look back at what you say here and use it." At least, that's my understanding of Miranda. Story 13. Vegas RT91 survivor here. When in a crowd full of people and gunshots are going off, it's important to try and understand what's happening. So many bystanders were frozen, and poor girls and guys just couldn't and wouldn't move. I was one of those people. Thankfully, I had my wife by my side to push me and tell me we need to go. As you run and see wounded, the adrenaline kicks in and you'll run faster than you ever could imagine. When the barrage of bullets would go off, we would fall to the ground and I would jump on top of her. When they stopped, we would run again and repeat if we heard the barrage again. 2 of the 3 times we stopped, we had a metal fence or bar to lay behind. The 3rd time was the scariest, as we were hopeless in the middle of an asphalt parking lot. Someone said it perfectly. Act and assess the situation so you can get out of harm's way. Panic and cry after. God bless the 58 souls taken that night. I hope no one has to experience this, and it's sad this comment even has to be considered in today's world we live in. Story 14. If you aren't trained and equipped for an in-water rescue, don't attempt an in-water rescue of someone who is drowning. Edit. What you should do, try to reach them with something like a long pole. This works best if the victim is close, like in a pool. Lie down so the victim can't easily pull you in. Try to throw the victim something that floats. Life ring, life jacket, wetsuit, pool toys. Those crappy styrofoam ice chests people sometimes take to the beach. It's handy if whatever you throw has a rope attached, so you can pull the person in. But it's more important to get the person something floating to stop the drowning. Then you can solve the problem of getting a non-drowning, and hopefully not panicking, victim out of the water. Try to get the victim in a small craft, like a jet ski or rowboat. This one is very situational, and often not available, but always should be on the list. Something I learned in the Boy Scouts was in this order: reach, throw, row, go. Story 15. Never use brake cleaner before welding. If you get stabbed, do not pull it out. Since it's Christmas, water your tree, or don't get a real one. On an airplane, if the oxygen masks drop, put yours on first, then put it on the kids. It's fine for them to get lightheaded, but if you do, then you both die. When pumping fuel, if there is a fire, do not pull the nozzle out. Just stop the flow if possible and back away, and hit the fire suppression system. If you hydroplane, do not make any sudden inputs. Just keep her straight and slowly lift off the throttle. Do not downshift to slow down on icy roads. If a dog is going to attack you, do not run. Make yourself look as big as you can and yell and snarl like a maniac, failing that kick at that dog. You are smart. You have 2 arms, 2 legs, and a mouth. A dog only has a mouth. You can defend yourself. Believe in yourself. Above all, my biggest piece of advice is do not panic. Keep your wits about you. You are so much stronger than you think. Just don't panic. Easier said than done, I know, but it's true. Keep your wits about you for the duration of the event. Many people survive the first part of the situation, but then make a simple mistake that costs them their lives. I was in a car accident on an icy freeway. We spun out and hit the guardrail, wrecking the car. Nobody was hurt, but we were pretty shaken. I made sure everyone was okay, then time to get the frick out. We hopped the guardrail and walked toward traffic so that if our car was hit, we wouldn't be hit by the breeze. Our car wasn't hit, but it was dark. In some cases, you should remain in your car if you can't quickly get away to safety. Keep your crap together, and keep in mind that those around you may not. Try to help them stay safe. There's no rule that 2 awful things can't happen 30 seconds apart. Story 17. Stay calm and keep your morale up. In Navy water survival training, you learn about a freighter that was capsizing at sea. The crew deployed their orange octagonal lifeboats, 2 of them, which had water, candy, some food, and basic fishing equipment, and a deck of cards each, as well as floating water condensers. The captain took one, and the first mate took the other, and the crew split between them into those boats. The lifeboats were tethered with 100 yards of line together. They were rescued about 37 days later. The first mate and his crew all climbed out of the boat under their own power. The next boat, the captain was very sick. At least 1 person died, and the rest had to be carried out of the boat. What happened? The first mate knew to keep his people busy, in good spirits, and kept morale high. Everyone had a job, and everyone knew the plan. The food was rationed, caramels, until they were able to catch fish. The water was rationed, and the condenser was deployed so they always had water. There was a watch each person kept to ensure that the boat was okay and in good repair, and they played games with the cards. They sang songs and kept the situation in check, and they remained in control. The captain despaired. They did nothing but use up all their supplies. They deployed their condenser, but they didn't watch it and empty it enough, and their morale was 0. The captain died soon after getting on the rescue ship. Lesson: stay calm and remain in control of your situation. Don't make problems, and work in harmony with your team and/or the environment if you are alone. Ray Mears has a great show on bushcraft and survival. Watch those. This isn't like the Bear Grylls bullcrap. Ray Mears is the David Attenborough of bushcraft and survival. He had a great ocean survival episode where they go into the story in more detail. Always carry a pocket knife. Know how to build a fire. Know how to start a friction fire. Know how to choose a campsite. Know how to create shelter. Stay curious and keep learning. If you do these, you will not just survive, but you will thrive. Story 18. I learned 2 things from Oprah many years ago that I will never forget. 1. Never search for your keys. Always have them in your hand. Before you leave one destination to go to the car, before you leave your car to go into your house, always have the key you need in your hand. 2. You stand a decent chance of stopping date essay by using the phrase, "This is essay." There are date essayers who convince themselves that it's okay because you want it, because you're playing hard to get, etc. This will not work on someone who set out to essay you from the start, who is angry. It might have the opposite effect. And hearing the word essay could possibly snap them out of it. Fortunately, I have never been in this position, but if I am, I certainly will try anything. Story 19. How to grow your own food. I don't know where the world is going, but every year that passes makes me think we may be existing in some kind of fairy tale golden era of greed, consumption, excess, entitlement, etc. We also depend on certain really heavy crutches, and one of them is that we think we will always be able to head down to Walmart and Kroger's and pick up food for that evening or week. If all that disappeared right now, how many people would know how to grow food for their family, where seeds are on carrots, how to ferment tomato seeds so you can save them for the next season, etc. Cold stratification, making compost, canning and storing food for the winter without getting botulism. I think everyone should know how to do these basic things, and it's a parent's responsibility to both learn basic survival skills like this and also transfer that knowledge to their kids. So much so that I decided to make a YouTube channel to teach these things through science. Canadian Permaculture Legacy. What would happen to your family if all of a sudden grocery stores everywhere went empty and weren't going to be restocked? It's better to learn and make mistakes before you critically need that skill. Plus, good nutritional food grown in nutrient-rich soil tastes so much better than hollow store-bought stuff that was picked 3 weeks early so that it could survive shipping. Tastes great, healthier, saves money, critical life skill. That's a no-brainer. Story 20. In my military training, they always told us, a wrong decision is better than no decision. In emergency situations, there are very few times where there is a decision worse than doing nothing. My favorite example of this was a video of an avalanche mishap that happened a couple years ago. The guy conducting the rescue did pretty much everything wrong, skied into the path, didn't use his beacon, and then took his clothes off to try and dig through the snow with his bare hands. People crucified the dude initially. The kicker is that at the beginning of the video, he's standing with a group of people. Turns out the guy had no training, but one of the others did. At the end of the video, when the original guy is dragging his friend out of the snow, the person with training is still standing on the ridge, trying to decide what to do. Story 21. When you utilize an EpiPen, the process isn't as simple as stab and go. Remove the blue top and then stab the orange tip into your thigh. Hold the EpiPen into the thigh area for at least 3 seconds, counting slowly. Then, take 10 seconds to rub the area of injection to promote the spreading of the medicine. Get to an ER ASAP and let them know that you have injected yourself with an EpiPen. With vulnerable persons, it usually requires 48 hours of supervision to ensure that the allergic reaction has been stopped. Also, if you know CPR, you should know this already, but if you have a CPR certificate and you witness somebody in need and you begin administering CPR, you should immediately ask the name of a person nearby, repeating their name back to them. You should then direct them to call 911 and report the emergency. That person will become your point person. Name recognition makes the person calling the police feel more important and confident. Adversely, screaming, "Somebody call 911!" creates a bystander effect, where people feel that some other part of the group should take responsibility. Story 22. If it's brown, just lay down. If it's black, then fight back. Bears, that is. It's a simple mnemonic to remember which kind of bears you should play dead for, and which you shouldn't. Brown bears might leave you alone if you lay down and play dead. Black bears will happily eat you if you play dead. So stay up and yell, wave coat, throw sticks at them, etc. There is a third line. If it's white, say goodnight, because polar bears will probably screw you up no matter what you do. Story 23. I met a homeless woman last summer and she told me basically how she ended up homeless, and it was heartbreaking. Let me know if anyone wants to hear more details because it's a pretty inspiring yet distressing story. Anyways, she told me something I'll never forget. This isn't verbatim, but this is the best I can remember and definitely captures the conversation. I've been essayed multiple times at this point. Both of you, my friend and me, start carrying pepper spray. No matter where you are or where you live, if someone is after you, spray them and run for it. And don't call for help. Yell fire. Help doesn't get attention. Yell fire. The fact that she told us not to yell for help breaks my heart. You could tell she learned that advice the hard way. Dang, thinking of her makes me want to cry. Story 24. Quick wild animal survival guide. Black bears and polar bears most always prey on their victims, and so you should first try to calmly walk away without turning around, and do your best to flee or fight if it charges. Do not climb trees. Brown bears usually only intimidate their victims, and so you should calmly back up without turning around. If it charges, play dead. Do not climb trees. Big cats only prey on animals that seem weaker than them, and so you should make yourself look big and scary by outstretching your arms and yelling and making loud noises. Do not climb trees. Moose, deer, bison, and many other antlered animals attack when they feel another animal is threatening them or their calves. If you get into a standoff, calmly back off without turning around. You can even run without triggering an attack. If it looks like it will charge, it's probably not bluffing, and so you should run away as fast as possible. Get behind obstacles and climb trees. If it catches you, curl into a ball with your hands covering the back of your neck and head. Alligators and crocs usually only attack prey that get too close to them, although they are very stealthy. So stay away and be aware. If you're on land and come across an angry one, just run away. No need to run in zigzags or circles as they aren't very fast on land. If it clamps you, beat the absolute crap out of it and aim for the eyes and throat. If it manages to drag you into the water, you're most likely dead. But still, try to get into its eyes and throat. Sharks are pretty unpredictable, so it's hard to make good calls around them. If a shark is around you, remain calm and slowly swim to shore while making as little movement as possible. Try not to turn your back to it. If it bites down on you, aim for the eyes and grab the gills. Punching the nose is not very effective because of water resistance. To be honest, if you run into a wolf, there's a 99% chance you're gonna die. They are faster and stronger than humans and travel in massive packs. You can climb a tree, but they will most likely wait you out. Your only chance really is to start firing your gun at them. Feel free to post others. Story 25. 1. If involved in a crash on the freeway, get out of the car and get off the road as fast as possible, especially if visibility is bad. Smoke, rain, fog, snow, etc. 2. If you drive into water, try to open the window before the car fills up, then undo the seatbelt. You'll find it easier to open the door with the window open. 3. If you lose control of your car and are going to crash, take your hands off the steering wheel. The forces of the hit can be transferred from the front wheel to the steering wheel and break your arms and wrists. 4. Hands at 9 and 3 on the wheel. If you hit a pedestrian or animal and it comes through the window, if you are at 10 and 2, you're going to lose fingers from the windscreen glass. Big thing in South Africa when I was learning to drive when they made the license test requirements change from 10 and 2 to 9 and 3. 5. If a dog attacks you, get in close and wrestle its head past your neck. You want to basically hug the dog with your necks touching so it can't get a bite in at your neck. Story 26. It's always good to identify and remember as many exits and entryways as possible whenever you walk into a building. On that same subject, make note of all stairways you can find and identify the higher traffic entrances and exits to make sure you can steer clear of large crowds of people should anything happen. Over time, it becomes more of a subconscious habit than a chore. It's just second nature to me at this point. Anything can happen anywhere. The building could catch fire, a robbery could ensue, and now random people with firearms just walk in and start shooting. Best to find your way out should something go down to ensure you and your loved ones make it out unhurt. Story 27. It's oddly specific, but I think of it often. If you find yourself buried alive but in a position to try to dig yourself out, you should take off your shirt and tie it around your head. Soil has more air than you think. Probably especially if it's been dug recently to bury you. Digging a deep hole takes a lot of time and effort, so you're probably closer to the surface than you think. And even if you do die trying, not trying also means death. The shirt helps you not breathe in dirt. Probably makes claustrophobia of being buried alive 1,000 times worse, but I hope to never find out firsthand. Story 28. I've been scrolling for ages and I can't believe I haven't seen the edibility test. An example, if you're out of food, how to identify if a plant is edible. It basically goes like this. 1. Separate the plant into various parts. An example, roots, stems, leaves, etc. Some parts of the plant may be edible, and others not. Focus on one part at a time. 2. Smell it. If it has a strong or unpleasant smell, throw it away. 3. Place it on your inner elbow or wrist. If it causes burning, itching, numbing, or a rash, throw it away. 4. Prepare it the way you plan on eating it, such as boiling it. 5. Touch it to your lips to test for burning or itching. If there's no reaction after 15 minutes, take a small bite, chew it, and hold it in your mouth for 15 minutes. If it tastes very bitter or soapy, spit it out. 6. If there's no reaction in your mouth, swallow the bite and wait several hours. If there's no ill effect, then that part of the plant at least is edible. You can repeat the test on other parts of the plant. Story 29. A sucking chest wound is a hole in the chest from a gunshot wound, stabbing, or another puncture wound that makes a new pathway for air to travel into the chest cavity. When the chest cavity is expanded in order to inhale, air not only goes into the mouth and nose like normal, it also goes into the hole. Sucking chest wounds are dangerous because they lead to collapsed lungs, pneumothorax. Treating a sucking chest wound requires two things: keeping air from going in while still letting extra air out. Simplest fix? Seal it with a film-like material, a Safeway bag, taping it from 3 sides, leaving one side unsealed. This will make it so on inhaling, the film will seal the wound, still allowing some air and blood to go out on exhaling. Story 30. If a metal can of food is ballooning out, do not eat it. Botulism is deadly and present in ballooned out cans of food. Also, be wary if you open a can and it fizzes or some of it shoots out the moment that you pop the can. It's better to be safe than sorry. Story 31. A great one I heard, thanks MFM, that I wouldn't be quick enough to think of in the moment. If someone is trying to mug you, throw your wallet or purse in one direction and run away in the other. The person mugging you likely just wants your cash and will go after the money. Also, another one thanks to MFM, screw politeness. If someone is giving you the heebie-jeebies, you do not owe them anything. Keep yourself safe first and foremost, rather than going out of your way to help a stranger who spooks you. Story 32. Might seem obvious and or silly, but Google has a feature which will tell you where you are. If you have service, you can type in "my location" or "what's my location" and other similar variations. I have been able to use this twice. Once when I was in a car accident not too far from home, but I didn't know the names of the intersections I was closest to, and our emergency services didn't want to take "just follow X road" as an answer. And once when my car broke down on the way home from a relative's. Helped me out, especially in the instance of the car crash when I was in pain, not thinking clearly, and afraid of the loons who hit me, drunk drivers. Story 33. If you're meeting up with someone you don't know very well, do it in a public space. Get vaccinated. It can protect you from deadly diseases. Whenever you go somewhere, tell someone or leave a note in your house of where you're going and when you expect to be back. Wear a condom during sex. It can protect you from STDs and unwanted pregnancy. If you see a bear in the wild, if it's brown, lay down. If it's black, attack. If you're being beaten, curl up into a ball and shield your head. You'll protect your major organs and prevent head injury. If there's an intruder in your home and it seems they're looking for you, rather than just trying to steal something, try to exit your house rather than hide, if you feel you can safely do so. Don't text and drive. Don't drink and drive. If somebody is trying to kidnap you by means of carrying you or dragging you, make your body go completely limp. It makes you so much heavier. If you're being attacked or kidnapped, aim for the eyes, groin, and throat. Story 34. Women are incorrectly advised to clutch their key between their knuckles as they walk to their car, so that if an attacker presents himself, she can punch him with the key. Do not do this, however. You are more than likely to injure your hand as the key twists upon impact. Instead, I recommend sharply looking over the attacker's shoulder and calling out a man's name, as if you see someone you know and you are attempting to get their help. The attacker will likely turn around to see who you're shouting at, giving you time to shove him forward with all your might, knocking him face first into the ground. Then run. I was mugged at knife point and this saved me. Story 35. If you're ever doing work around the home and you're alone, keep your phone on you in case of an emergency. I had a mate that was mowing his backyard when he hit a rock which snapped the mower blade and sent it flying straight into his upper thigh. He only has flashes of memory of what happened next, but he remembers being halfway up his back steps, Then he remembers lying on his kitchen floor with the fridge door open and his cut leg elevated in the fridge. He remembers his phone next to him on the ground, and he remembers waking up in the hospital the following day. Turns out, he had managed to call for an ambulance, and they told him to elevate his leg, but he has no memory of that. He nearly died from blood loss. Had another mate that nailed his hand to the wall with a nail gun and didn't have his phone on him. He pulled his hand off the wall over the head of the nail. If he had his phone, he would have had other options. Story 36. Make a safe word for your child. Make sure they know parents' government names, addresses to parents, grandparents, and/or a trusted adult's home, phone numbers, how to spell their own government name. Pawpaw can't come save your child. I'm John Stewart that lives at 789 I Am Broke Avenue makes a huge difference. Make sure your kids know enough about themselves that they can kick and scream and hit and bite long enough for help to arrive. Story 37. If you find yourself tired and yawning all day and feel like you don't get enough sleep no matter what, you might possibly have sleep apnea. You might be waking up dozens of times per night and not realizing it. Sleep apnea is where you stop breathing in your sleep. And it can be fatal, not just because you might stop breathing for too long, but because you might be so exhausted you pass out behind the wheel, or don't notice that huge bus coming right at you, or worse. Bonus points if you frequently wake up with an extremely dry mouth or stiff throat, have very vivid dreams that you're drowning or suffocating, can't remember your dreams immediately after waking up, wake up unable to catch your breath even though you're breathing, feel like you haven't slept even though you fell asleep 8 hours ago. Talk to your PCP. They don't really do sleep labs anymore. You'll just get a simple reader that clips on your fingertip in your own home. Story 38. Don't wear a life jacket on the interior of a vessel. If it goes, you will be pinned to the ceiling, or floor if you're upside down. The kind of panic you would be in that situation would make getting out of the vessel difficult to begin with. Always have one on hand and close by though. They can be the difference between life and death. You'll pass out from the cold before anything, and that will keep you afloat. Also, put the whistle in your mouth. Not only will it keep tweeting when you pass out, but it will prevent crashing waves from flooding your mouth. Story 39. I was a sophomore boy dating a senior girl. Senior guy named Joe wanted the girl I was dating. He cornered me and said, "I'm going to beat you until you can't move." I calmly asked why. I actually said something like, "Would you like to talk about that?" And he did want to talk. He'd always wanted the girl I was dating, and he was pissed she would date someone from a lower class. I calmly said, "Joe, what do you think is going to happen when you beat me? She's going to hate you. How about this instead? We become friends. I get to know you a bit and I keep talking about what a nice guy you are. Because honestly, Joe, most high school dating doesn't last long. Wouldn't that be better?" He said, "Wow, man, you'd do that for me?" "Sure, buddy." We shook hands on it. Then I told her he was a psycho and to never date him. But I always acted like he was my friend from then on. Smiley face. Story 40. I remember getting an essay talk in school from a man who works in sex crimes. First thing he said was, I talked to a serial essayer who has essayed hundreds of girls. I asked him what made him decide not to essay one of the victims he chose, if that ever happened. He said if they kicked and screamed and put up a continual fight, he just left them alone because he knew it wasn't worth it. Most women will seize up and try to black out the situation. If they are a fighter, he will leave them alone. The other thing he said to do if you are ever caught in a sexual situation heading south: 1. Say no as much as possible and try to push them off and run. 2. If that does not work, slowly turn the no's into a playful yes, like you've changed your mind. 3. Act like you are into it, and then once his mind is clouded enough, ask to go to the bathroom. The harasser will most likely say yes to avoid being peed on. 4. Make a run for it. That seminar was probably the most useful few hours of my schooling, and the man said every year I have girls coming up to me and say they did this and avoided SA, so stay safe. Story 41. Never put a food which grows or comes into contact with soil into an anaerobic, oxygen-free environment unless it's properly canned or fermented. This will result in botulism, which is a common bacteria in soil, producing botulism toxin, which can be quite dangerous. A common example of this is garlic-infused olive oil. It is extremely dangerous to put raw garlic into olive oil and allow it to sit on a shelf to infuse. Olive oil does not become oxygenated like water does, so it remains an anaerobic environment, allowing botulism bacteria present in garlic to produce botulism toxin. Botulism does not produce toxin when in an aerobic environment. It will just reproduce bacteria, which your body can handle, as long as you observe normal food handling guidelines, or when the pH of the food or liquid is below 4.6, which is why foods with ferment on the shelf are okay. Fermentation produces lactic acid, lowering pH. Botulism spores can survive up to 250 degrees Fahrenheit, so boiling alone is not enough to ensure a botulism-free environment. For foods which are canned and not fermented, either acid needs to be added to lower the pH, or they need to be properly canned in a pressure cooker to raise the temperature above 250 degrees Fahrenheit. Story 42. Better to be tried by 12 than carried by 6. In most places, you can use self-defense up to and including deadly force. Don't die because you think you'll go to prison for not dying. However, your TV is dead, so let them take it. Your wallet is worth less than your life. If you can avoid the confrontation, do so. Never presume you'll win in a fight. Get out of there. If you have a child or spouse in the house, self-defense often extends to them. I'm sick and tired of seeing people say they have to sit there and be murdered in Canada or the UK. It's simply not true. You will have to defend yourself in court in some cases. I say it's worth it. Story 43. If you're in a kidnapper's trunk and you need a silent way to alert someone, some things to do could be to 1. Look for a switch or button to open the trunk from the inside. Most modern cars have a requirement for this in their trunk, and it usually glows in the dark. 2. Kick with an adequate amount of force at the corner of the trunk. This could cause you to break a light which you could stick your hand through, and subtly alert someone by waving through the hole you've created. If worst comes to worst, someone would at least notice the broken light if you can manage to make a hole. Source: too many paranoid YouTube binges. If you want more info, just search it up. They've got a lot of stuff. Story 44. If you're choking and you're alone, call 911 from a landline and leave the phone off the hook. They can see exactly where you are if you call from a landline, and they have to send someone. Then, try ramming your stomach into the edge of a counter or the back of a chair or something similar. The sound of a struggle will help the dispatcher to decide if it's real and not a prank call. But regardless of what they do or do not hear, someone has to respond to any 911 call. You can try sticking your fingers down your throat at first to see if you can reach whatever it is, but don't spend a lot of time on that option. Try once after calling 911 and then drive your stomach into something. Story 45. If you're in a deadly situation, an example, someone is trying to hurt you, fight to run away. Your aim shouldn't be to win a fight, but to hurt the perp enough to run to safety. If you are not able to run, either give in to their demands, if reasonable, like money or material items, or confront them. If you have to confront them, don't cower. Just like with animals, you are more likely to get hurt and killed acting like prey than a predator. Moreover, a predator is less likely to continue if their prey is going to put up a struggle. Story 46. This might sound like a lame point, but given the number of accidents, injured, and death in traffic on a daily basis, it is way more important than most of us imagine. If you're driving your car, keep calm and be patient. Try to anticipate as much as possible and remember we're all human beings. The other people also want to get to their destination ASAP. It's often, not always, I know, the less patient people on the road that cause the traffic jams in the first place. Use your indicators. Keep a bit of distance. Mind the road as much as possible. Don't text or call, even hands-free if you don't have to. Don't change lanes. Drive in the right lane whenever it's possible, or left lane if your country doesn't drive on the right side. Don't run red lights. Don't overtake everyone who drives a tiny bit slower than you. Don't try to win time by speeding, and try to be prepared for the worst every time, like a child coming from behind a truck or from behind a bus at a bus stop. Last but not least, watch the road far ahead of you as well. Some people seem to be aware of only the first 20 meters in front of them. These might seem so obvious, but the amount of near accidents I see on a daily basis is immense. More often than not, I meet up with those people at one of the next traffic lights or behind a marginally slower truck. These are some examples of stuff I see happening almost daily, stuff that every single one of us hates. Even though we all hate it, it's still stuff that people do. If traffic permits it, an example, there's like 2 other people in a 2-kilometer stretch, you can do whatever you like. But when there are a lot of traffic and you start getting annoyed at other cars, actively try to remember all the research and avoid getting pissed. Speeding will win you maybe 2 to 3 minutes. Not using indicators is just plain lazy. Switching lanes too often creates stop-and-go traffic. If traffic is dense, merge early so you don't have to cross 3 lanes to get to your exit when you reach that exit. Just slow down a few kilometers an hour if necessary, and avoid being that a-hole who cuts through traffic. Remember that if you can't get to the exit, it's not the fault of the others, but rather, and most of the time, your own fault for not anticipating your next maneuver in time. If you're overtaking someone by going marginally faster than them on the highway, freeway, whatever it's called, and you see a slow truck in his or her lane, speed up or slow down. Try to avoid forcing them to brake, or speed up and cut you off. If someone gives you a call, don't pick up until you are out of traffic, unless you know it's an emergency. If an accident has happened a while ago, an example, emergency services are already present, pass by safely and at an adjusted speed, but don't grind to a halt to watch the scenery. You aren't contributing by slowing down and taking in the sights at 20 kilometers an hour, sticking your nose to the window as if you've seen magic. If a truck stops in the middle of nowhere in the middle of the road, chances are that he's letting a child cross the street. Don't overtake him thinking that the a-hole is slowing you down unless you are 100% positive. If you drive past the truck anyway, being 100% sure no child is crossing, be prepared to brake for the child that you didn't expect. Lastly, if someone does a dangerous maneuver, consider the chance that you were the one creating the dangerous situation in the first place. It's definitely not always the case, but even I make mistakes in traffic without realizing it sometimes. Maybe the other driver was moving to the other lane to avoid causing an accident. The fact that you had to slow down a bit doesn't make them the worst driver ever. Maybe they just made an honest mistake, like not hitting their blinker hard enough and only noticing it while already changing lanes. We all get tired. We all misjudge distance and speed. Sometimes we all lose focus for a few seconds when on the road. Being an a-hole because other people sometimes look like a-holes is only contributing to the exact problem that you hate. We're all humans here, driving 1,000 kilogram plus killing machines at ridiculous speeds trying to get to our jobs or homes on time. Accidents will never happen to you until they do. They're called accidents for a reason, and it's not always your mistake. Make traffic safe and relaxing for everybody. Keep your eyes and mind on the road. Story 47. Understand your family health. Once you understand it, take preventive steps not just for yourself, but also those you love, especially if you have kids. My father passed 9 weeks ago yesterday. Why? Because he was scared to get tested for the disease that took his father and paternal grandmother. I watched as the man who raised me died an extremely painful death. 2 weeks ago, on the 7th anniversary of his death, I got myself tested. Guess what? I caught the disease in time for 100% survival. Was it fun? No. Was it scary? Yes. I vomited because how scared I was. Now, I will be tested every 3 years. Had my dad done this, my kids would get one more Christmas gag gift from him. He would get to hold his wife while the grandkids opened gifts. Take care of yourself because you don't know how critical you are to those around you. You matter. You make someone smile. Period. Story 48. Recognize a stroke. Time is key, so you have to do it fast. F-A-S-T. Face, arms, speech, time. Is their face lopsided? Make them smile. Arm weakness? Have them raise both arms in front of them like a zombie. Speech? Have them say a simple sentence. Time to call 911 if you notice asymmetry or any difficulty executing these tasks. Every second may be brain cells dying, so you need to act fast. Remember, F-A-S-T. Story 49. If your car's cruise control won't shut off or starts accelerating out of control and won't respond to the brake or any of the buttons on the steering wheel, shift the car into neutral gear and shut the car off in order to disengage the electrical system so you can brake to a stop. This happened to my dad while he was driving us somewhere once, and it was terrifying, but his quick thinking saved us and anyone we might have hit. It turned out to be some wires in the steering column that got damaged by rodents, and I've never heard of this happening to anyone else. Still, just in case, it's good to know. Story 50. Get tested for STIs after every new partner or once a year, whichever comes first. Do this even if you always use condoms, or if you're in a monogamous relationship. STIs are no joking matter, and even though they're most likely all treatable or curable nowadays, they can do some nasty damage if left untreated. On a related note, take the full course of antibiotics whenever you're prescribed them. If you stop taking them after you feel better, you've likely just encouraged the growth of a whole bunch of resistant bacteria in your body that may cause another, more serious, infection in you, or it could spread to other people. Antibiotic resistance is absolutely terrifying and growing at a super alarming rate. There are some strains of MRSA that are practically incurable now due to resistance. Save a lot of lives and just finish your antibiotics. Story 51. Always pay attention to where you are. On the freeway? Which one? Which direction are you going? What's the cross street? What's the address of your home? Friend's home? Name of the business? Don't just think you're at the McDonald's when there are 10 or more of them in the town you're in. Are you at the one on Main or the one on Roosevelt? Knowing these things will literally save your life or someone else's when you call 911, because 911 can't always reliably see where you are or can GPS you. But if the 911 dispatcher doesn't know where you're at, God can't help you then. Story 52. All the good ones have already been posted, so I'll offer this more abstract advice. Screw you, pay attention. Listening to a cool bass drop on your phone? Screw you, pay attention. Texting that hottie on your phone? Screw you, pay attention. Trying to read that text on the straightaway? Screw you, pay attention. So many of the horrible scenarios outlined in this post could be avoided if the people involved weren't stuck inside their own head when they're out and about. You have no idea what scene you're walking into when you turn a corner. Keeping your senses keen will keep you alive and intact. Story 53. Not sure who will see this because I'm late to the party, but hopefully someone will. If you ever get mugged, throw your wallet, or whatever they want, away from you. The mugger is most likely more interested in that and will go and get it, leaving you time to run away. If you are in a parking lot and somebody with a gun gets into your car and tells you to drive, floor it into a tree, wall, car, whatever. Your airbag will save you, and you can get out and run. SOS in Morse code is ... If you ever get stranded on an island, make a, preferably equilateral or as close as you can get it, triangle in the sand. Try to have fires at the points. If not, use sticks and outline it. Triangles are a distress signal as they don't occur naturally like that. For a signal fire, get the fire going and then put live plants on it. Use green stuff. It makes a lot of smoke. Book plane seats towards the back of the plane. Most plane crashes are nose first, giving the people in the back a greater chance of survival, although a very small increase. Story 54. I didn't see this anywhere, but if you are driving and see someone driving like a maniac, going really fast and weaving through traffic, do not try to speedgate them, which is blocking them in purposefully, slowing down to prevent their maniac driving. No matter how tempting, you do not know the situation they are in. There is a true story of a man who was, I believe, working on a construction site when his friend got severely injured. They could not contact emergency services, so the man resorted to speeding his friend to the hospital. However, a man in a truck just thought they were driving like morons and he speed-gated them. This caused the friend to die of blood loss in the car. Story 55. Know your limits when drinking alcohol. Don't allow yourself to even get close to said limits when you're not with close friends or family who can look out for you if things go pear-shaped. Make a plan for getting home before you get too drunk to figure that crap out. Ideally, a plan in which you won't be traveling home alone. Keep contact details of someone close to you in your purse, in case you lose your phone or have it stolen from you and aren't capable of remembering the phone numbers when random kind strangers come to your aid. My tiny passport photo of my partner, with his number written on the back, was a funny joke, until it saved my butt massively. Cherish the person who comes to your rescue with genuine concern, love, and the patience of a saint when you're sitting on the pavement at the side of a random deserted street with vomit on your shoes and blood all over your clothes at 2 in the morning. Story 56. I don't think this will save someone's life, but it might be useful one day. If you are going to be alone for a long period of time, or if you live alone, I'd recommend always taking something you can use to contact someone, a phone or an iPad, etc., to the bathroom. It might be useful because, 1, if you get stuck, you can contact someone who can help you get out. Or alternatively, you could just leave the door open and prevent being stuck in the first place. 2, if you get really ill or injured and feel as if you cannot get off the toilet or out of the bathroom without making the situation worse, you can phone the emergency services or someone to come help you. 3, it can prevent you from dying of boredom. It sounds like someone's hopelessly addicted to their phone. Story 57. If you're having a heart attack, breathe in and strongly cough to breathe out. You should cough every 2 seconds. Should the heart be too weak to beat on its own, you can give yourself rudimentary CPR this way, preventing you from passing out as well as forcing oxygen into your blood. Also, attack is the best defense. When attacked by someone, immediately launch your attack and don't go defensive. When grabbed by the hair, for instance, use your arms and legs to throw punches. The attacker will go on the defensive and back up and won't be able to continue his attack. Most attackers don't even have a guard up, which gives you the best chances to throw as many punches at them as you can in a short time. I studied mixed martial arts for 15 years. One thing my master taught me is the best defense is a great offense. Story 58. Vomiting is good. If you feel that you're about to hurl, only attempt to stop it for long enough to get to somewhere better to do it, the toilet or a sink as opposed to grandma's couch. This is especially important if you're drunk. If you're pretty sloshed and feel that you need to puke, your hangover the next morning will be less awful if you just puke and get it over with before crashing. Don't induce it, but don't go holding it back if you feel it coming. We vomit to get rid of things inside of us that our bodies don't like. It's a very crappy experience, but it's usually worth it to not hold back. Story 59. If your car ever starts to slide on ice, do not slam on the brakes. Hitting the brakes hard only sends your vehicle completely out of control. Hold on to any bit of control you have. Let off the gas and allow your car to coast, thus gradually reducing its speed and countersteer. If your car turns left, turn your wheel slightly to the right. When it starts to go back to the right, turn the wheel a little less to the other direction. Just keep trying to put your front wheel steering straight down the road until you slow down enough to regain control. Also, along these same lines, if a deer runs out in the road in front of you, don't try to steer around it. More than likely, you'll end up going off the road and hitting a tree or rolling your car, both of which is far worse than hitting a deer. If a deer runs out in front of you, just hit the brakes and keep your car in a straight line. It sucks getting in a car accident. I know, I've been in 10. If you can avoid an accident, absolutely do so, but not at the risk of making it worse. Your primary goal should be to keep yourself and others around alive. Also, wear your freaking seatbelt. I'd be dead multiple times over if I didn't. Story 60. MARCH. Massive bleeding, hemorrhage, airway respiration, circulation, hypothermia, shock. When someone is suffering from major catastrophic trauma, treat them for their injuries in this order. Bleeding out will kill faster than anything. A compromised airway second. Lung trauma is third. Cardiac trauma fourth. And treat for hypothermia and shock fifth. Take a trauma treatment course. Carry a tourniquet in your car at least. I recommend carrying it on your person. ACAT or SOF-T are the two different tourniquets I recommend. Story 61. If you're in a public setting and you obviously need help, but people are walking by, call someone out specifically to help you. For instance, "You in the red shirt, help me! Call 911!" When I took psychology in college, we learned about the bystander effect, where individuals are less likely to help a victim when others are around. This is partially due to diffusion of responsibility. Everyone assumes someone else will help. The story that goes with this is that of Kitty Genovis, who was murdered near her home in New York in the 1960s. There were 38 witnesses, but no one helped her or called the police. Anyway, our professor said if you call out someone specific to help you, they are more likely to feel personally responsible and give you the assistance you need. Story 62. Most people cannot outrun a dog, especially a dog that would be big enough to harm you. If you cannot quickly get inside or on top of a building or a car, then stand your ground. I was once charged by two large dogs, and I instantly stopped moving and calmly breathed because I had nowhere to go and I couldn't outrun the two dogs. The dogs stopped charging about 5 feet from me and started to growl and get closer. I kneeled down, held my hands out low to the ground. Both dogs quickly calmed down and started licking my hands and face. I did not pet them. Do not pet them. I waited until they got bored of licking me and walked away. Then I calmly walked away. I was around 14 to 15 years old. I'll never forget that. Disclaimer: all I know is it has worked for me and others I know. It obviously will not work every time. If you can easily get away, then do so. Story 63. Man, I got a couple. All guns are loaded. Even the gun you just checked is loaded. If the hammer is present, the gun is loaded. It's loaded. I cannot stress this enough. If you come upon a snake on a trail, don't run and try not to scream. Just back away calmly. If you are bitten, don't do anything to the bite. Take a photo of the snake or try to remember what it looked like. Stay calm and call 911 or drive to the hospital. There are very few snakes in the world that can kill you before you get help, and most of them are in the ocean. If you are in the tropics and get stuck with a spine or cut yourself, stop immediately. Clean that crap out with peroxide or alcohol. Dig out the spine and neosporin the crap out of yourself. Jungle infections are no freaking joke and can sneak up on you. If you are bitten by any small mammal, squirrel, raccoon, rat, etc., try to capture or kill it and contact a hospital. If you don't have the animal, then you will need a rabies shot, and they are unpleasant. If you have the animal, they can test them for rabies instead. It is a destructive test. They need to take the brain out, FYI. Story 64. Survival Rule of 3 and Survival Priorities. For real survival situations, it is better to remember and prioritize by the 4 levels of the survival rules of 3. You can survive for 3 minutes without air or oxygen in icy water. You can survive for 3 hours without shelter in a harsh environment, unless in icy water. You can survive for 3 days without food, if sheltered from a harsh environment. And lastly, you can survive for 3 weeks without food, if you have water and shelter. Story 65. How to start a fire without fire. Flint sticks are amazing and stupid small and make things so much easier. You can hang one from a keychain. They never break down and last for years, even under heavy use. Friction fire methods are all about proper wood and proper technique. Wrong material or method and you will waste hours and energy and you still need a fire. There are also 2 kinds of fire, a flare-up and a sustained fire. One will save your life and the other will break your heart. Do yourself a favor and learn this stuff outside of a crisis. Straight up, Tom Hanks' Castaway. You will feel a link that goes back to cavemen. Story 66. If you end up underwater in a car, let the car fill before trying to escape. I learned this the hard way. I had an automatic start on my car. As I was fishing, I had my lights pointed at the water because my headlamp died. I caught a fish and went to get my pliers out on my passenger seat. As I bent down, I hit the auto start button on my keychain and my car took off right into the water. I was forced inside the car by the door hitting the riverbank. As the car was sinking, 40-degree water was slowly pouring in, and I was panicking. So I opened the door and water rushed in, throwing me against the center console. If I had hit it any harder with my head, I know I would have been knocked out and drowned. Once the car filled, I was easily able to open the door and swim to safety. Story 67. If you're about to suffer a big impact, car accident, a fall from heights, etc., relax. There's a reason that drunk people survive a lot of heavy stuff. If you tense up and prepare for impact, it's going to go worse than if you try going loosey-goosey. Source? I'm the drunk guy that fell 30 feet to concrete. I was hammered and as such completely relaxed and silent apparently. So whilst I fractured 2 vertebrae in my back, the doctor said that being floppy saved my life. Story 68. Everyone has seen a picture like, you can have 3 of these things when you are stranded on an island. What do you take with you? And somehow, most people tend to take matches or a lighter with them. If you have the chance to choose, for example, between a rope or matches or a lighter, always take the rope. You need to think of things you can't ever get on an island. But starting a fire with flint and some dry wood is the easiest thing in the world. And you find flint on almost every island, because it's a very common mineral. Also, flint is way more sustainable than a lighter or matches, because it takes very long to run out of flint. But matches or gas of a lighter will be out in a few days. So always think of things you are unable to get in the wild. Example, pistol, rope, can for water distillation, flashlight. Story 69. If you are ever kidnapped and your kidnappers secure you with zip ties, they are easily breakable. If they tie you up with the ties on your wrist in front of you, put your arms out straight and quickly thrust your hands to your sternum. They'll break. Tied at the wrist and behind your back, a bit more difficult, but spread your hands out as far as possible and sit on them. The pressure will break them. Ankles tied, keep feet together and squat down. The angle and distance the ankles need to separate will break them. Zip ties are just plastic, y'all. Even the thick ones. They may seem constricting when they're on you, but in a kidnapping situation, you will break those things. Story 70. This might be a little controversial, but I speak from experience. If you're being kidnapped or robbed at gunpoint, do not immediately assume the attacker is ready to kill you. A lot of criminals will not kill because it worsens their situation than compared to a robbery or kidnapping. So many will not actually shoot the weapon. And if you do think they are ready to kill you, stare them right in the eyes. This will make them feel more uncomfortable with you and will not actually do it. And while being kidnapped, they probably won't kill you. If they're kidnapping you, they need you alive. Try to fight as much as you can, make as much noise as possible, and don't let them take you into a vehicle. Eventually, if anyone sees, they will realize it isn't worth the trouble and drive off before they can be identified. And always remember, don't be afraid to go for an attacker's beanbag. In the immortal words of Ron Swanson, there is no shame in going for a criminal's beanbag. To clarify, I'm not a criminal. I've been held at gunpoint twice before, and both times they were by people who did not have the capacity to kill and would not risk it. A friend was almost kidnapped before and managed to save herself when she kept these things in mind. Story 71. I'm a teen, so here's one for the other teens, or for parents to tell their kids. Everyone should have some sort of password when accepting rides from people, especially people they don't know, and it should change fairly frequently. Most kidnappings are done by people who know the kid pretty closely. Also, if you are being kidnapped in a public place, even if you are a teen, but this is mostly for kids, sometimes people will just assume it's a kid throwing a fit. So teach your children to yell, "This is not my mom or dad, etc. I don't know this person," or even just, "I am being kidnapped." Also, make sure you have some numbers memorized and not just on a phone. It's important to have a backup plan if you find yourself in an uncomfortable position with a dead phone. Story 72. Women. I found this trick has allowed me to walk through the most dangerous cities at any hour. Make your walk look bizarre. I mean like Ministry of Silly Walks level bizarre. And argue or shout at an imaginary person. Throw a few punches at this invisible person. Attackers are less than willing to engage with someone who is crazy, because crazy means unpredictable. And the angrier you appear, the even less appealing you appear to an attacker. One time, I was walking through a dangerous area with no streetlights. I saw a man appear out of nowhere and begin walking towards me with his eyes fixed on me. I changed my body language to demonstrate that I was excited to finally take out my anger on someone. And by that, I mean I quickened my pace and began stomping and grimaced my face and balled my fist and stared him down as I walked toward him. That guy got right out of there. Story 73. If people are ever robbing your house and for whatever reason you can't escape or call the cop, Cock a gun in an area where they can't see you or easily track your position via sound. It's going to be incredibly hard to do this in the heat of stress, but in your most demanding yet calm way, shout the words, "Leave now." Most criminals will take their chances with a crazy lunatic who's screaming at them to leave, but not a ton of them will take their chances with someone who sounds completely in control with themselves. Remember, they're likely freaked out too, and they don't want to die, so you can expect this to push them over the edge. A gun battle is a battle of reaction and precision. That could be a 50-50 split, and if there's more than one, then your odds are reduced. But a mental battle can be won no matter the numbers. Story 74. Learn how to effectively commit violence against another human being. Karate, jiu-jitsu, boxing, wrestling, MMA, Krav Maga, or simple self-defense classes. But learn at least a basic understanding and practice of how to severely harm another human being. Most of our violent instincts are geared towards social violence for settling social dominance disputes. We're meant to hit another person to make them feel pain and submit socially, hitting the gut or strikes to the face. A person who is trying to kidnap you or hurt you is not a target for social violence, but someone you need to use anti-social violence against. Strikes to the throat, breaking fingers, kicking to the sides of the knee or ankle joint with intent to break it, tripping your attacker, and then stomping on their head. If someone is trying to kidnap you or harm you on the spot, you need to have it in your toolkit to kill or maim them. If you are not able or willing to do that, but you are up against somebody else who is, you are going to lose. And then, obviously, when you have some of this knowledge, you only ever use it for self-defense or the defense of someone else who can't defend themselves. Story 75. If you are ever in a situation where there is no foreseeable way out without physical violence, hit first and aim for the point of the nose, if the crotch is unavailable. Once you have made the decision that you need to fight to escape, go in hard and commit to it. There is no need to wait for them to hit you. Urgency and surprise will give you an advantage. Hitting the point of the nose will cause the person's eyes to tear up immediately, obscuring their view, and will give them an incredible headache and toothache, cause their nose to potentially break, and blood to stream down their face into their mouth. Generally, hitting them in the nose would be preferable to any other place, as afterwards they will be disoriented and otherwise incapable of fighting. This will give you valuable time to escape or land another hit. Story 76. Out in the woods and got yourself some blood poisoning? Animal fought and milk poultice. Saved my mom while trapping and she stepped on a dirty nail. Blood poisoning up to her knee and a day's boat ride back to the settlement, plus an hour car ride to the next hospital. Animal fat. Who knew? Edit. Hares have no fat. If you can't find a deer, a bird has the fat. Tip 2. Out in the woods and don't want to get scurvy? Young pine needles have lots of vitamin C. Chew for a quick dose, or make a tea if you can. Story 77. Things I learned in the Boy Scouts. Wilderness Survival Merit Badge. When lost, the first thing to do is stop. Stay calm. Sit down, have some water, and eat something. If cold, put on a sweater. Breathe slowly and relax. Think. Try to remember how you got where you are. If you have a map, open it and see what you can learn from the symbols and contour lines. Observe. Look for your footprints. Notice any landmarks or clues? Listen for others in the area. Plan. If you know how to get back, do so carefully. Use a compass and clearly mark your way with broken branches, piles of stones, anything else. If you don't know where to go, stay put. Use signals of 3. From there, provide first aid if needed. Seek shelter, build a fire, signal for help, drink water, and don't worry about food. From the hiking merit badge, leave your itinerary of where you are going and when with a close friend or family member. If you go on a weekend hike but go missing, no one will notice till work on Monday, whereas if your family knows you should be off the trail at 3 p.m. on Sunday and don't get a call from you, then S&R now has a 15-hour head start from the next time someone will notice you are missing. Also, leave your itinerary in your car at the trailhead. Both of these will narrow S&R search area. From the personal fitness merit badge, use caution for potential cancer symptoms, change in bowel or bladder habits, a sore that does not heal, unusual bleeding or discharge, thickening or lump in the breast or elsewhere, indigestion or difficulty in swallowing, obvious change in a wart or mole, nagging cough or hoarseness. Again, if you are experiencing any of these cancer symptoms, please see a specialist to schedule an examination and screening. From the Emergency Preparedness Merit Badge, don't go under an overpass in the case of a tornado. The wind will be more intense there rather than you getting to a low-lying area like a ditch. People will cite the Shields Boulevard in Moore, Oklahoma case where out of about 12 people, only one died, but what is not said is their injuries included, but are not limited to, compound fractures and shattered bones, missing fingers, missing ears, missing noses, and being impaled by pieces of shingles, 2x4s, etc. This will also block traffic because of everyone ditching their cars. Story 78. If you are ever lost in the woods, find and follow water. It will lead you somewhere. When you're lost without any other resource, but to keep walking, follow water. A lot of people say to stay put, but at a certain point it is no longer a viable course of action. I was lost in the woods, miles from where I belonged. The path was poorly marked, and it was pouring rain. No service, no other hikers, no cars on the road near where the trail was, no cell service. I had to just keep walking. I was so far off course and had made the arrogant mistake of not informing anyone where exactly I was hiking due to being an experienced hiker. Always tell someone. I walked for hours until I found water. I ended up at a dried out creek and followed it for miles. I used my phone's compass to guide me towards the direction of the road and followed the creek that direction. Eventually, it opened up into a ranger road. I followed that for a few miles until I came to the main road. Still no service. Attempted 911. Couldn't connect. Walked until I found someone to help me. Soaked and exhausted. One of the most terrifying experiences of my life, and if I hadn't known to follow water, I might not have gotten out. Story 79. Oh, I got one. Never look down the barrel of a firearm. Loaded, unloaded, magazine in, magazine out, bolt open, bolt closed. Doesn't matter. You don't point the business end at yourself in case you don't know what's inside it. And even if you do, it might have a surprise for you. Not so short story. A while back, my uncle had a friend who passed away who was a bit of a reenactor and hoarder, though as his health deteriorated, he just simply started collecting things with the ambition to go back to it. So he gets this Enfield/Garand style rifle that has been deactivated, old school style as per usual in the UK for this kind of weapon. Now, in our country, you can't have an unreported, unregistered weapon legally. Plus, my uncle had a young kid, so he didn't want any chances. He called up a friend and had an off-the-books visit from an armorer, someone who stores people's guns, to come and verify if it had been permanently made safe. My uncle knows this guy because he is a firing instructor for cadets using a .22, or similar. So, the guy turns up, chunky lad, and begins to look at this rifle. Oh yes, welded bolt, serial number, blah blah blah, looks all good. Then he starts looking down the barrel for whatever the freaking reason. He never explained it, he just kept pointing it at himself and would occasionally knock the rifle around by the butt to see if it goes off. Still with the barrel end held or pointed in his general direction. When he left, we used a mallet to open the breech, and there was an unspent round in it. He was lucky they took the firing pin out, because sometimes they don't even bother to do that when they weld them. My uncle didn't call him an expert after that. LOL. My uncle didn't call him an expert after that. Story 80. Keep a turnstile tourniquet in your vehicle at all times. Turn until the bleeding stops. Your appendage is unlikely to suffer from severe necrosis for a few hours. Plus, it doesn't really matter because without one, you'd bleed out anyway. Aspirin can save someone's life if administered right after a heart attack. The Heimlich maneuver. It's super easy. First, call 911 or your emergency center depending on country. Ask them to bend over and cough. Administer 3 blows to the back. If that didn't work, cup your fist and thrust about 2 inches below their belly button. If your friend or loved one is ODing on opioids, make sure to tell EMS to bring Narcan. Locally, we have ALS and BLS, which means the ambulance may or may not have the medication, so you want to make sure the right bus makes it. Never cross the highway on foot. As horrible as you might feel, reach out for help. Love yourself and give life a chance. There are those that will understand. I've seen these things save many lives. Story 81. If you are driving alone in the middle of the night and you think someone might be following you, do not pull over, get out of your car, or go home. Instead, keep driving until you find a safe public space where people can see you and your car. Then do whatever it is you can to get their attention. Honk the horn, turn on your hazard lights, drive around in the parking lot in circles honking your horn. If you have Bluetooth in your car, dial 911 for help and let them know you think you are being followed and which road you are driving on. I had someone follow me once, and I drove into the parking lot of a fast food place. Didn't have Bluetooth in my car, but as soon as I pulled in, I flashed my high beams right into the window where people were eating, and they looked immediately. The person following me drove off. Story 82. Nuclear warfare is a serious threat that hasn't been mentioned yet. The following was common knowledge during the Cold War era, but most people my age don't know what to do in a nuclear disaster. In a nuclear explosion, most of the damage and death is caused by the shockwave the blast creates, not the fireball, which has a comparatively small radius. One day, you may find yourself outside or looking out a window to see an extremely bright flash, as bright as you were staring at the sun. Do not attempt to locate the source of the flash. You have maybe 8 to 10 seconds to respond if you're far enough away from the fireball. Lay face down on the ground and put your thumbs in your ears and fingers over your eyes. Breathe through your teeth. Since you're laying face down, the shockwave will mostly pass over you. If you're standing up, it can cause your lungs, eardrums, and other organs to explode. Once the shockwave passes over you, you need to find shelter immediately. I said before that most death from the explosion is caused by the shockwave. Well, far more death is subsequently caused by nuclear fallout after the blast. Do not attempt to travel anywhere. Just get underground. If you're next to a complete stranger's house or a business, don't hesitate to go inside and hide out under as much concrete and steel as possible. You need to remain in this location for the next 48 hours. This is critical. Even if you survive the blast, if you attempt to go home and spend just 20 minutes outside traveling, you will more than likely die of radiation sickness. Radioactive material after a blast decays exponentially, and you will be safe to try and find your loved ones after 48 hours. If you don't wait this out, you definitely won't be alive to find them. When you're ready, you need to leave the city and get as far from the fallout as you can. Story 83. If you ever fall through a body of water that has iced over, you should first try to remain as calm as possible and catch your breath. Kick your legs in the water until you are horizontal with the ice. Once you are as flat as you can be, you should kick your legs with your hands on top of the ice as to gradually push yourself out of the hole. Most people would panic and simply try to grab onto the ice in a vertical position, as they break off more ice trying to escape. It requires much less effort to do it the other way. In the same vein, if you ever need to tread across very thin ice for whatever reason, distributing your body weight will make it less likely that the ice will break. If you are simply putting all your weight on your 2 feet, there is a lot more weight in just those 2 spots. You could either go on all fours or lay flat on your stomach and crawl, but this is only if you absolutely need to. Story 84. If you're in a rainstorm and your hairs begin standing up, you've become a lightning rod. Get flat on the ground with arms and legs together. You can't actually cure a jellyfish sting with urine. It's not basic enough to counter the acid. Most pee is almost neutral, or slightly acidic. When walking through snake territory, the second person the snake sees is usually the one to get bit. The venom will make your heart beat like crazy for a minute, then feel like it's almost not beating at all for a minute. This, coupled with even slight panic, will stop your heart. You can't suck it out, but if you remain calm and control your breathing, you can extend your life long enough for professional care. If you're in a bar or something and someone is unavoidably starting crap and wants to fight, chew gum or start eating food. It's a weird psychological trick, but it calms people down. Keep a six-pack in your trunk. If you're drunk and you hit something, go to the trunk and start drinking. The cops can't prove you were drinking before that. Please don't do that one. Bears run faster uphill, but slower downhill. Not that your chances are very good if it's hungry. Story 85. Probably late to this, but here it goes anyway. 1. When walking on the road or side of the road for any reason, always walk towards the traffic and not alongside it. If a driver is about to hit you for any reason, you can see it and try to avoid it, and not the other way around. 2. If you ever have a problem with your car and you need to stop it on the highway or somewhere similar, and you want or need to wait outside your car, never, ever put yourself between your car and the highway barriers, or even in front of your car and next to the barriers. If someone hits your car from behind, you are likely to die or at least be very injured. If you're behind your car, you're much safer. I know of multiple people who died because of these two situations. Stay safe, good people. Story 86. If you're in a car, always remember to put the actual belt part on your pelvis and not above it. In short, your pelvis is designed to take a lot of force, and you will sustain light damages if you are in a crash. But if you put the seatbelt above your pelvis and get into a crash, the seatbelt will push all your organs up and around your chest, which can damage just about all your organs and your lungs and can cause internal bleeding. It's a good idea to always be paranoid about this. Also, make sure the upper part of the seatbelt is on your chest or rib cage instead of your bare neck, for obvious reasons. Story 87. Trauma kit. Fire starter, preferably a magnesium stick as this will last longer than matches. MREs, they're specifically designed for emergencies. A couple space blankets, light, small, and very good at reflecting heat. Extra clothes, especially socks and gloves. You don't want cold feet and hands. A sharp knife. A knife can do anything you need it to. Story 88. Don't put a gun with blanks up to your head and fire. It will still kill you at that range despite not having metal slugs. Actors have died in real life from this blunder. Air in a syringe can cause a lot of pain. Limb injury, if in an artery, and even death, if in a vein. So make sure you flush those syringes, and those noob nurses working on you remember to also. They have so much running through their heads. Small things get left behind sometimes. When prescribed a lot of medication, make sure you get a chart telling you what and when to take. Then get one of those daily pill containers so you know when you've taken one and never have to guess. Pill overdosing is a common cause of death, and it's usually because Granny can't remember if she had that pill 3 times in a row. So consider organizing it for your own parents when they need it. Feel free to take the pill containers and the prescription list with the original pill bottles to a pharmacist if you're ever unsure about things. I separate pills by morning and evening and even draw pictures of them with identifying pictures for my parents. It actually did save them from misdosing a few times. Story 89. Plans are useless. Planning will save your life, trip, or whatever. The chance of whatever particular disaster you plan for happening is slim. But if you think about a dozen different problems happening and how you would solve them, and 10 of them involve a specific thing helping to fix them, you should have that thing. For instance, winter driving. Whatever problem happens, having a blanket usually makes it more survivable or less unpleasant. So put a freaking blanket in your car. All the research and thinking you do here has a way of building up in your brain, giving you a deep pool to draw on. Also, the first plan takes you an hour to put together. The second takes 20 minutes. By the time you are at plan 20, you can throw together something workable. Not necessarily optimal, but perfect is the worst enemy of good enough. In a matter of seconds in your head. See above about deep pools. And having a plan, even a half-baked one, will save you someday. Because Douglas Adams was right, and the best advice is don't panic. Panic means stupid decisions, which means ruin. If you have a plan, you are much less likely to panic, which means you are more likely to get out of something with life and limb. Safe travels, my friends. Stay awesome. Story 90. You can get out of restraints all sorts of ways. 1. Firstly, avoid being taken at all cost. Your chances of surviving are much higher if you attempt your escape before the attacker has time to prep you. 2. If your attacker asks to see your hands so he can restrain you, present both hands balled into fist, palm up next to each other. This orientation puts more space between your wrist and will make later escape easier. 3. Zip ties can be escaped in a few ways. If your attacker has used regular zip ties as opposed to zip cuffs, you will likely be able to break them by first getting your hands in front of you, then raising them over your head and bringing them sharply down onto your gut. This will hurt a little and may take a few tries, but it's better than whatever your attacker has in mind. 4. Zip ties that are too thick to break can have their locking mechanisms bypassed if you can find something to do it with. All you need to do is shove something into the locking mechanism so that it comes between the belt of the zip tie and the one-way ratchet. A needle works great for this and can be easily concealed. 5. Zip cuffs are a bit harder to get out of because they are too thick to break and have a guarded locking mechanism, which makes bypassing it difficult. They are still made of plastic, though, and can be destroyed using a friction saw. You can make a friction saw out of nylon shoelaces if you have them by tying the shoelaces between your feet with the lace running through the cuffs in the middle. Doing a bicycle motion should saw through the zip cuffs fairly quickly. 6. Handcuffs have a universal key, which I recommend keeping on you. If you don't have one, a bobby pin can be used to pick cuffs open quickly if you know how. I would suggest just finding a YouTube video on it and practicing. 7. Handcuffs, if they aren't double locked, can also be shunned the same way as zip ties. 8. Duct tape takes time, but is fairly weak when you attack only a little at a time. Story 91. I never had to use this, but it seems like a very sensible and good idea. If you carry a decent-sized multi-tool on you and you're worried about anyone attacking you, don't try to take out the knife. It takes way too long and knives are harder to use than you think. And if the knife is out and the attacker gets it from you, they have a knife now. Instead, pull out the tool, keep it closed, and grasp it like a knife handle, with a bit of it sticking out of the pinky side of your hand. This makes a very effective club and is less threatening, harder to get out of your hands, and will be better than trying to use just yourself. You can easily and effectively hurt your attacker, and someone who's getting the crap beaten out of them by a small blunt piece of metal is probably going to regret their decision very quickly. Story 92. In the event of a power outage or other potentially prolonged natural disaster, fill your bathtub and any other relatively clean water containers, an example a toilet cistern, with water ASAP. This is especially true if water is pumped to your location and not due to natural water pressure. Having fresh water is essential to survival, and that bathtub can hold a metric crap ton to be precise. If you're unsure about bathtub, toilet, bucket, cistern, etc.'s cleanliness, you can use a small amount of water and about 50 drops of bleach, which is about 50 milliliters, to clean your containers. Don't drink the cleaning solution though. It's a bit strong and will probably hurt. Related, 8 to 16 drops, which is 0.5 to 1 milliliter of unscented bleach, sodium hychlorite, per gallon of water will purify it for drinking. This works for cloudy water too. This amount of bleach is safe to drink. Story 93. CPR and Heimlich on a baby, less than 12 months. CPR. Lay the baby on a flat surface and use 2 fingers, placed in the middle of the chest and about a ½ inch to an inch below the nipples. Even out your fingers so that you aren't putting most of the weight into one finger. Compression should be about an inch, 100 beats per minute. Staying alive or another one bites the dust if that's more your jam. Heimlich. Use your hand to lay the baby on its stomach. The best way to do this is so that the baby is basically laying, straddling your non-dominant arm with its head supported by your hand. In the lower half of the shoulder blades, strike in a slightly upward motion with the palm of your hand 3 times. Then, turn the baby over and place it on its back on a completely flat surface. Place your hand on its forehead or below the neck to keep the head tilted backwards. Do the same motions with 2 fingers that you did with the CPR, except with a slightly upward motion. Rotate again after 3 pushes. Many people can do CPR on an adult, but very few on a child. Important stuff I learned from counselor training. Story 94. Not sure if this has been said yet. I would say it's the golden rule and can prevent a lot of issues most people have. Be aware of your surroundings. Do a casual glance around every once in a while to see how many people are in the coffee shop with you. Figure out all the exits at the grocery store. Figure out what places are 24-hour locations if you have someone following you where you can hide out, or just find out if you are being paranoid or not. I'm not saying go on a mission and demand to know where exits or give people stare downs. Just start observing. Look around a little more than you might normally do. It's a great way to not even get into situations. This also extends to people as well, from family to friends to strangers and acquaintances. See how they interact with people who work in customer service. Are they supportive of you when you are interested in something even if they are not? Do you always get a weird feeling about someone even if they seem nice, but you just don't feel comfortable around them? This doesn't mean you should start vetting friends and family all at once. Just take a different approach to looking at people, especially people you have known for a while. People change, which is fine, but you might realize the best friend you had since elementary doesn't hold the same morals as you, and because of your history, you stay amazing friends. But in reality, you're really not in a healthy relationship after all. I hope this helps some people, and if you want clarification, I will try my best. Story 95. Don't get into fights, even if some drunk idiot is screaming insults in your face. Just back down and let him scream. You are not as tough as you think you are, and anyone willing to yell obscenities and threats in public is more unstable than you, more violent than you, and has likely had more practice at fighting than you have. Get out of there. Back down. Walk away. Yes, it will hurt your pride, but it's better than getting yourself permanently injured or charged with assault. People don't realize how easy it is to get damaged for life. Source: I am a martial artist. I am not as tough as I think I am. Also, always know where the exits are, even ones marked employees only. If there's a fire, an active shooter, or some other tragedy, being able to leave quickly and quietly may save your life. Story 96. For the love of God, please wear a seatbelt whenever you're in a car. No matter if you're in the front seat or in the back seat. One person unbuckled in a car can kill everyone in the car because of the sudden stop, making the body fly around the car. Safety precautions are made for a reason, and they'll save your life. Personally, I won't drive my car anywhere unless I can see everyone has their seatbelt on in my car. I take it very seriously, and it's no joke. Too many people die from not taking the small safety measures. Story 97. EMT here. Do not, I repeat, do not remove yourself or others from a vehicle after a motor vehicle accident until EMS has arrived on scene to assess you, especially if you or they are having neck or back pain. You may have spinal injuries, and self-extraction could result in permanent disability or further injury up to and including death. Obviously, the exception to this rule is if the vehicle is smoking, on fire, or you are otherwise in an immediate life-threatening situation. Story 98. This is more to save other people, but it might still save a life. If someone you know suffers from depression and self-unaliving tendencies, suddenly has a change in their mood and energy levels after taking antidepressants or new medication, and it seems like they might be beginning to recover, pay extra close attention to them. They might be starting to recover, or the medication has given them the energy and the ability to take their life. It's why antidepressant medication is noted as saying there is a risk of self-unaliving, not just through overdose, but because of the taker's energy level. It's raised so they can possibly commit self-unaliving in a certain way. That's why you hear stories of people who were supposedly getting better or being much happier recently, taking their lives. Support your friends, check in on them, and watch their moods carefully. It might save their life. Story 99. Never, ever swerve to avoid a kangaroo or any other Australian wildlife. Brake gently. Don't brake too heavily, or the front of the car will dip and might flip the kangaroo through the windshield and into the cabin. Cars are easily replaced, and with few exceptions, there is no main road so remote in Australia so as to leave you stranded to death if your car is destroyed by wildlife. Source: I have driven about 200,000 plus kilometers in remote Australia. I've hit, or been hit by, just about every animal there is to hit in this country. The only time I've had a serious crash was when my friend, who has no experience with country or remote driving, was driving and swerved to avoid a goanna. We left the road, went down the embankment, and rolled once. Story 100. Drowning does not look like drowning. People do not flail and scream like in movies and TV when they're drowning. Their body is trying to conserve as much energy as possible, and they often will simply bob up and down in the water. Drowning doesn't look like drowning. It is the number 2 cause of accidental death in children age 15 and under, just behind vehicle accidents. Of the approximately 750 children who will drown next year, about 375 of them will do so within 25 yards of a parent or other adult. In 10% of those drownings, the adult will actually watch them do it, having no idea it is happening. Drowning does not look like drowning. I guess this is more saving the lives of others, but I feel like a lot of people don't know this. Story 101. A tip: find what you want to do in life and never let it go. I was struggling, and still am, with social anxiety. When I was switching schools because the school I went to only had up to 6th grade, I don't know how classes work in other parts of the world, but I was 13. I seriously thought of ending myself because I'd have to get new friends. I am 15 years old now. I played video games all the time, and I was never that good at them. So I was not a very social creature. I have always been shy, until I found my passion, music production. I went from hating life and not caring whether I lived or died to loving life. I am still an introvert, but pretty much all the worries I had about my future are now gone. I am going to a music gymnasium. My grades are not that great, but I have more than enough to get in, and they also increase the amount of pupils they can hold. Music might have saved my life. I might have settled for some other gymnasium line had I not found music, and then I would not have been happy. Story 102. If you crash your car into a power pole and the lines fall either on your car or the ground next to it, either stay in the car and do not touch anything metal, or if you must get out, bunny hop away from the car until you are more than 75 feet away or so away from it. If the lines are still energized and touching the ground, the voltage potential dissipates concentrically from the point of contact with the ground. If you take a step and your front foot is at a point where the potential is 45,000 volts, and your back foot is at a point where the potential is 60,000 volts, you became a circuit for 15,000 volts. Search for the video, Look Up and Live. It is a training video for video photographers who operate news live trucks with telescoping mast, and it has a section that explains this very well. Story 103. I asked this question to a veteran paramedic friend of mine. He told me 3 tips he would give the average person to lower the chances of death or serious injury. 1. Always wait a few seconds and look both ways before going through an intersection, even if the light is green. 2. Always chew your food thoroughly, especially hot dogs and steak, most common. Apparently, he would respond to a lot of choking calls, and although most people survive, it's a nasty and painful ordeal. 3. Always perform CPR when necessary. He would respond to a lot of calls where someone would be dying, and people would just stand around and watch, waiting for the ambulance. Knowing how to properly perform CPR on others is key. Story 104. If you have a temporary stroke, go to the ER immediately. Sounds obvious, right? I'm talking about the symptoms of a stroke. An example, paralyzed side that fades away after a few hours. It's not a jammed nerve. Well, maybe it is, but don't take the risk. Nor is it a stroke per se. It's called TIA, transient ischemic attack, or mini stroke. As I said, it goes away after a few hours, but it's a definite warning you will probably suffer a real stroke in the immediate future. Get into medical care. Best case scenario, they are even able to prevent the stroke. Someone with medical background, please correct me where I'm wrong or unprecise. Story 105. If you are truly choking with something high up in the throat and cannot get it out at all, with the Heimlich maneuver failed or asthma, there is a last resort. Make a cut with a clean knife or scissors low on your throat, in between your arteries. This can be a vertical cut to avoid accidentally cutting arteries. You should be cutting open your or your patient's air pipe below the choke point without cutting into the arteries. There will be blood. Keeping this new hole open should allow you to breathe, although this has none of the usual filtering of air that the nose has. So keep this open and as clear as possible, and obviously get medical help. This may damage your vocal cords, and if medical aid is available, they are normally trained to do this as an emergency procedure. Obviously, let them do it. It is possible to drown after getting out of the water, even an hour later. You, your friend, a child almost drowned? Get medical help and get your lungs checked out for water. Normally, a trained medic should be able to listen to your breathing in the lungs with a stethoscope and determine from that whether you have a problem. Story 106. Probably not applicable everywhere, but in South Africa, at least, if there's a break-in while you're at home, don't call the police. Call a friend to do it for you. Years ago, when it happened to us, I called the number we've been taught since kindergarten. I was placed on hold to listen to a tune while I waited. Had to hang up when they came into my room and took my phone. Also, it helps if your emergency contacts already have your details, such as your address and other emergency contacts. Story 107. Don't pour cold water on a burn. Counterintuitive, yes. But have you ever parboiled a tomato to peel it? Yep, boil and shock with cold water, and the skin pops right off. Same thing. I learned this the hard way when a handle popped off a pan of boiling water I was holding. It splashed me from eyebrows to knees, the worst. I screamed, and my husband poured cold water on me. Yeah, don't do that. Second-degree burns turn to skin peeling off in chunks. I'm still scarred. Glasses, thank God. My face looked like a mild sunburn at worst. Peeled, but no scars. Story 108. This is much easier said than done, but in any situation you're in, drowning, being stranded, kidnapped, injured, lost, whatever survival situation you may be in, always assume you're going to survive. This cannot be stressed enough. You have to believe you're going to make it out alive. If you assume you're going to survive, it'll help stave off panic, and you'll be able to determine how you're going to survive. If you assume the worst, that you're going to die, panic will set in, and you may not try as hard to survive if you're already assuming it's no use. You have to believe there's a way out, even if there isn't, or you lose all hope and the will to live. Winners always assume they're going to win. They just have to figure out how. No one ever wins by assuming they're going to lose. So remember, always assume you're going to survive, then work on figuring out how. If you assume you're going to die, then you're dead already. Story 109. Trust your animals. If your dog is suspicious of someone, then don't ignore them. A few weeks ago, a man knocked on my door in the middle of the day claiming to be with Verizon, asking how everyone's service was going. I thought it was weird that he wasn't trying to get people to switch and didn't have a Verizon logo on his shirt. It seemed like I was home alone, but my boyfriend was actually just asleep. So around 8 p.m., my boyfriend goes to take the dog out, and who does he meet walking down the side of our house? There's no reason he'd be back there to get to other houses, and why would he still be by my house 8 hours after he knocked on my door? Well, the dog goes crazy barking at this guy, and my dog has always been very shy and submissive. I thought it was weird how violent my dog was towards this man, but for some reason, my dumb brain didn't realize that he was probably on his way to break in and probably do something terrible. If I had paid more attention to my dog, I would have at least called the police. If my boyfriend hadn't been home, who knows what that guy could have done. I guess another good tip is to make it look like you're not home alone when strangers knock on your door. Or just don't answer. Story 110. It has already been said, but if you are kidnapped and in the trunk of a car, look for a release latch. They usually glow in the dark, but if not, you should be able to feel a plastic ring attached to a cable. If you can feel speaker wires in the rear shelf, short the wires out. This will stop the stereo, and in most cases, the dash light's working. Check if you are in a car with an electronic trunk latch, find the wires, and add power from the brake lights to the circuit. It should open the boot. If the battery is in the trunk, disconnect it, or do your best to short it out. This will kill the ECU, thus stopping the car. Once the car has stopped, be ready to fight as soon as the trunk opens. If all else fails, short the tail light, brake, and indicator circuits out. A car with no lights at all will either be reported to the cops or people will be paying attention. Make as much noise as you can from the trunk of the car. Bang on the lid, scream, etc. Story 111. This may not help with some of you anxious Redditors, whom I advise to see a doctor non-urgently for their anxiety. Medical emergencies are not always obvious to folks who aren't health professionals. A lot of people judge it by the level of pain, but that's not always reliable. This is why you'll hear about people who get told after a big scary issue that they've had multiple heart attacks or strokes they didn't even notice. Learn the symptoms, including the atypical ones, for heart attack and stroke. Don't forget that even if the symptoms go away, you still need to be seen. See your doctor for yearly physicals and follow up on your blood work and exams. Know whether you have high cholesterol or high blood pressure. If you're feeling odd or uncomfortable, particularly if you've had an abrupt change in how you feel, call your doctor or a nurse hotline. If you have insurance, they almost certainly have a nurse hotline for this situation. If you're that horrible sort of flu sweaty, going gray, having any sort of weakness or tingling in your arms or legs, having pain in your chest or trouble speaking or breathing, just go to the ER. Don't screw around. Doesn't matter if it hurts or not. Don't try to sleep it off. Don't try to tough out systemic things like diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, autoimmune diseases, or symptoms of heart disease, attacks, or strokes. You are literally only shortening your life, possibly cutting it short altogether. We have great ways to treat most of these now. Ways that are cheaper the earlier we catch them especially. But listening to little symptoms is definitely life-saving in many cases. Story 112. Listen to your instincts. You got them for a reason. If you are in a situation, for example with other people, and it suddenly starts feeling like a potentially life-threatening one, like danger, and you notice that something does not feel right, adjust yourself and your reactions to better safe than sorry, and feel free to just leave the situation with an excuse. You may or may never know when you hit the point of no return, if there is one, so never consider going anywhere near there if you fear there may be one. Don't be afraid of running away. If someone chases you then, you've been absolutely right. If not, forget them. This one was a nightmare to read. I don't even know if I made it make sense. Story 113. If you're being jumped, be absolutely compliant. Give them whatever they want. If you're being jumped and you don't have what they want, be absolutely compliant. If it is clear that they are going to hurt you, empty your pockets, offer them your phone, and promise you'll close your eyes and get on the ground to let them get away. If it is still clear that they will hurt you, be absolutely compliant. When it is clear that they will still hurt you, fatally or serious bodily harm, say, Okay, fine, I have money in my sock, 1 sec, and then hurt them in the most painful way possible and either run or disarm them if you get the chance. Also, look up self-defense videos and familiarize yourself. Story 114. Clear water isn't necessarily fresh or safe water. If it's in a stagnant pool, even if it looks perfectly safe, stagnant water can have a lot of bacteria in it, which can make you sick if you drink it straight. If you're out in the wild somewhere and need water, better sources are from rain or running water sources like a river. Some rivers may also be poisonous, such as rivers filled with strychnine. If you're in a survival situation, try and find one you see other animals drinking from. and see if they, live. If you're heading to an area for hiking or camping, make sure to read up ahead of time to learn about safe and dangerous water sources in that area. My family went camping a few years back. There was a strychnine river right next to our campsite. No warning signs, that we saw, were posted. Luckily, we found it out ahead of time. Story 115. If you are seen walking alone and being followed, make a phone call. If you have headphones in, turn your music down to listen rather than taking your headphones out. When you make a call, loudly greet the person you've called and say where you are. It can be off-putting to potential attackers. Then you can quietly explain why you've called. Make sure you laugh loudly to get as much attention as possible. Phrases like, "I'm nearly there," or "I'm not far away," will also help you. Attackers who think you are about to meet someone while also being on the phone to them will leave you alone. You could also establish an agreement with your friends that if you call and talk to them, but press numbers on your phone, you can hear the beeps, that this indicates you are in potential trouble. Always walk through lit areas, even if it's a much longer walk. Stop and ask people for directions. Flag down cab drivers. Change directions if possible, but always maintain line of sight with other people. If you have to cross an alleyway, cross as widely as possible. Same with an intersection. Go the long way around. It will also help identify if you are being followed. Stopping frequently in shops, bars, food outlets will also help indicate if you are being followed. Staff in these outlets will often be helpful. If you are being followed and are followed into an establishment, don't use the bathroom. You will likely be followed into it and it won't end well. Call the police. If you don't want to make it obvious, ask a passerby, a cab driver, store assistant to do it, provided it won't leave you on your own. Never go home. This was shared with us by the police after a woman was followed and essayed. She knew she was being followed, but started to panic and ended up going through a park. On a night out and think you've been drugged? Don't go to the bathroom. Go to the bar. Tell as many bartenders as you can and be sick publicly. Make as much noise as you can. Try and get the staff to call the police. A girl I went to uni with started to feel unwell. While her judgment was poor, she knew she was in trouble. So she went to the bar and caused enough commotion for them to call the police. She was later found to have been drugged. She saved herself. Story 116. If someone is drowning in cold water, do not jump in to save them. Leave it for the fire and rescue service and paramedics. This is because when you go into cold water, you stimulate receptors in your skin. These receptors are responsible for driving ventilation. This causes you to lose the ability for you to hold your breath. Think of when you gasp when the water in a shower is cold. The general idea was that people were dying in water due to hypothermia, but they were dying way too quickly for that to be the case. The lethal dose of salt water within the lungs for an adult sits at roughly 1.5 liters. The uncontrollable inhalation caused by the cold shock response is 2 liters. So if the patient is in choppy water or completely submerged, they're going to be inhaling more water than what the lethal amount is. Even if they don't drown, they still need to get to the hospital. This is because salt water sits in the lungs and due to the osmotic gradient will cause fluids to be drawn into the lungs, drowning the patient internally. It takes roughly 2 minutes to drown, cardiorespiratory arrest, and 10 minutes, good, 25 minutes, bad, to die. Depends how fast you can start resuscitation, unless it's in cold water. This is because during the inhalation caused by the cold shock response where you inhale up to 2 liters of water, if the water is below 6 degrees Celsius, the water that is flushing about within the lungs cools the heart. This cools the carotid blood supply to the brain, essentially cooling the brain. If the brain is cooled to 20 degrees Celsius, it extends its hypoxic survival time to roughly 60 minutes. This means if someone is drowning in cold water, they essentially have 60 minutes optimally. Don't go in after them because you will inhale water and drown yourself. Story 117. Always look for a way out of danger. I've seen plenty of dead people who had another option but panicked. An example, you find yourself in a rapidly filling car. It's upside down. Doors and windows blocked by concrete walls of drain canal in a flood. Driver found dead with his face and hands pressed into the highest place trying to get the last air. Otherwise, uninjured prior to drowning. Driver could have popped the boot and folded seats down. Tested and proven later was actually very easy to do, and would have resulted in the driver finding air in an unsubmerged trunk and an easy climb to the top of the drain. In a crap situation, ask yourself these 3 important questions. 1. What's happening? 2. Where is the danger and safety? And 3. What can I do to get to safety? Keep asking and finding answers till you are safe. Questions like these save lives. Panic kills. Story 118. I've got a bunch. I'll try not to hit on the ones already mentioned. Never let a stranger, no matter how innocent they seem, get you to lead them somewhere. They could have an accomplice at that area, and their job is to lead you away from the public. Do not try to stab someone or something with a knife that does not have a guard. Your hand will probably slip off the handle and slide across the blade. The previous grip will cause this wound to be very deep. Avoid getting too drunk or too high in public. Once you lose enough situational awareness, you become a noticeable target. Reserve this for close friends in safe places, if you must do it at all. On the subject of alcohol, if you've never done it or don't know how your body will react, go slow. Do not play drinking games. The consumption is way too fast, and you won't even know you've had too much until it's too late. If walking and crossing a street, look behind you for cars coming up, to the right for cars coming from the neighborhood, and to the left for cars turning into that neighborhood. Also, be walking with traffic when possible. I would strongly advise against going camping or hiking alone. Yes, it may be liberating, but things can rapidly go out of your control in the wilderness, and a buddy is extremely important. Also, be familiar with the flora and fauna of a location that you're camping or hiking. If you have to take a punch to the face, lean into it. It will upset your attacker's timing and soften the blow considerably. Obviously, the best option is to dodge entirely, but it can't always be avoided. Try to land it on your forehead. When entering a heavily populated area, concert, sports arena, etc., take note of the entrances with the least foot traffic. In the event of a panic, people are more likely to leave the way they came. Always clean the lint filter on your dryer after each use. Make it part of your routine to just empty it when you grab the clothes. Story 119. Don't drink and drive. Always lock your car doors when in the car. Have pepper spray in your pocket, with your hands on it and ready to use when you're walking in lonely areas. Lock your home doors and windows or leave a pole in so the windows can't be slid open. Carry non-coated aspirin to stave off heart attacks and stroke. Cover your bar drink with a cardboard coaster to avoid being roofied. Story 120. I have a few. 1. If you're at a party and you find someone passed out on the floor, or you're with someone who's drunk enough to pass out, prop their torso and head up above their legs before calling emergency services. People who have passed out due to alcohol poisoning or over-intoxication have a high likelihood of death by fluid aspiration. They vomit while passed out and then aspirate the vomit, also known as inhaling it into their lungs, which can not only cause an infection, but in the short term cause fluid to fill their lungs, effectively drowning them on land. Alcohol poisoning is not a joke. 2. If you're ever around someone who starts seizing, clear the area around them of any hard objects or people and do not touch them. There's this dumb urban myth that when someone is seizing, you need to put something in their mouths or hold them down. Do not do this. You will likely cause more damage trying to prevent them from seizing than they would do to themselves while seizing. Make sure you time the seizure as well. When the person has stopped seizing, place them in the recovery position. Stay with them until they regain consciousness, and be prepared to calmly explain to them what happened. It's more than likely this is not their first seizure. Call emergency services if the seizure lasts longer than 5 minutes. You know that the person has never had a seizure before, or they are experiencing difficulty breathing or walking after the seizure. Source: my aunt is epileptic, and we've spoken at great length about her epilepsy. Also, I have first aid training. 3. Do not mix your drugs. I cannot stress this enough. The majority of overdoses are the result of mixing drugs or not knowing what a drug has been mixed with. Research and, if you can, test any and every recreational drug you purchase. This rule also applies to prescription drugs. Know what they interact with and the basics of how they work. A general rule of thumb with recreational drugs is not to mix two drugs of the same type. Don't mix downers with downers. Don't mix stimulants with stimulants. I have been to too many college parties where kids have taken benzos like Xanax or Ativan and mixed them with alcohol. Alcohol is a CNS depressant. So are benzos. The combination of the two can cause loss of consciousness, slowed or halted breathing, and slowed or halted heartbeat. Your body will literally slow all organ functions down until they just stop. It is slow and often goes unnoticed. That being said, mixing stimulants and downers is a bad idea too, because the two can sort of cancel out each other's effects temporarily, increasing the likelihood of overdose. Mixing alcohol with cocaine, for example, causes the body to produce cocaethylene, which is extremely hard for the liver to process, prolongs feelings of inebriation for both drugs, and increases your likelihood of cocaine overdose due to it being a slower and more difficult breakdown inside the body. Basically, crap builds up faster than it would normally, and you can die. Source: I've done a ridiculous amount of drugs and seen my fair share of overdoses and dangerous drug situations. Story 121. Reasons to call your doctor now or go to the emergency room immediately. Cardiac or vascular, severe chest pain and back pain, chest pain and whatever pain above and below your diaphragm, aortic dissection, pulmonary or cardiovascular, chest pain, pressure or shortness of breath, MI, PE/pulmonary embolism, cardiac arrest, chest pain or pressure or shortness of breath, sweating followed by collapse or seizure, that's cardiac arrest. Young kid passing out or collapses while running, cardiac dysrhythmia, generally not immediately after doing it in the cooldown phase. Airway or respiratory, you can't swallow your spit and you're drooling. Epiglottis, Ludwig's enigma, retropharyngeal abscess, severe loud and barking cough in a child about 2 to 5 years old. Croup, foreign body aspiration, choking. Kids, infant not able to eat and not peeing for more than 12 to 24 hours. Acute renal failure, severe dehydration. Infant less than 6 months old with cough, leg swelling, and won't eat. Pediatric heart failure, congenital heart disease. Neurologic, sudden and or exertional onset headache during sex, lifting, etc. Subarachnoid hemorrhage, ascending muscle weakness, cauda equalon, Guillain-Barré syndrome, can't move arm, leg, or slurred speech, ischemic stroke, symptoms of a stroke and a sudden or severe headache and or loss of consciousness, hemorrhagic stroke, bleeding/GI, alcoholic vomiting blood clots, esophageal varices, alcoholic with fever and hallucinations and tremors, alcohol withdrawal seizure, can be fatal, large amounts of rectal bleeding or clots, severe diverticular bleed, AV malformation, black poop or diarrhea with shortness of breath or passing out, severe anemia, toxic or chemicals, seizure after or during drugs or any overdose, hypoxia, brain bleed, overdose, seizure, coma, death, heroin user who can't move their legs, spinal epidural abscess, others purposely removed, environmental, tick bite with fever and headache, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, pregnancy, loss of consciousness when you're pregnant, ectopic pregnancy, PESAH, pregnant and leg swelling, cardiomyopathy, preeclampsia, late pregnancy and having a seizure, or recently delivered, eclampsia, trauma, seatbelt marks on the chest or abdomen with pain, which isn't just on the surface of the skin, intra-abdominal hemorrhage, too numerous to count.